Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Monday, December 19th, 2022. Time for another show. It comes at the same time each day, more or less, and yet I don't know. There's simply no way to prepare for this. And this is the week when schools are closed. Well, at least for our counties, schools are closed this week and next, which is great. Great for the kids. Terrible for orienting me, in the morning, especially on a Monday, to getting ready in time to, I have supposedly plenty of extra time, which I usually throw out the window immediately by saying, all right, well, I will just prepare differently in the morning, and I don't have to, I don't have to do the preschool preparations because there's no school, so I can either use the time differently or, I don't know, not use it at all. Just, fritter it away, and then all of a sudden it's 9 o'clock again, and it comes at the same time each day, except for when we switch it because something daylight savings time. You know how it goes. Anyway, everything should be okay, but just a little bit off today. But there's plenty of news to keep us occupied, that's for certain. And all right, let me make sure that all our alarms are set and that they don't come blaring through necessarily. I think everything is okay with that, so our break should be okay. Lots to catch up on today. It was another wild weekend, further meltdowns in the bird place, which may or may not result in anything different happening. Might change the direction of things slightly, maybe not. I guess among the many things that happened there over the weekend, I guess including Friday, maybe it happened just before Friday. Yes, it did happen just before Friday. We got a chance to discuss the fact that Elon Musk, I guess, decided essentially he was going to ban from Twitter all criticism of him, essentially. First, there was the one story that he considered embarrassing or damaging, and everybody who reported on it or asked about it would be banned from Twitter. And again, I guess the development over the weekend was that they announced that their new policy was going to be that there would be no discussion allowed on Twitter of Mastodon, where everybody has been migrating to. No discussion of Mastodon, but in fact, no discussion of any other social media outlet as either. If you were leaving and going to Instagram, you weren't able to tell people that you were going to Instagram. No discussion of other social media platforms on this one social media platform, which is kind of the death knell. It's a good indication, too, that he really just didn't know what he was buying. He knew that it was a popular social media site, and I'm sure he understands how social media works. It's just he didn't really know what he was getting into. He doesn't use it the same way other people do. So, lots of people, their livelihoods are tied up in their social media presence, or at least their ability to use one social media platform to promote their other social media presences elsewhere. So this was kind of a major blow and a last straw for a lot of people, and a really serious indication that you just don't know what you're dealing with. The idea of charging people $8 a month so that they could join your social media platform. Join the one that's walled off from the rest of the internet. That's not something that's CompuServe, and we got rid of that in the 1990s. It's not an interesting platform. It's just not usable. And this annoyed even the Elon Musk fans and supporters on Twitter, I think. That led him to put up a poll, apparently yesterday, day before. I don't know when he put it up. I don't pay attention to what's going on there that specifically anymore. But I did see that he put up a poll asking whether he should step down as CEO of Twitter and announcing that he would abide by the results of the poll, which I guess leads me to believe that he had to know how that was going to come out. I don't think he could possibly have been surprised by the result there. You put up a question like that, you're going to get trolled out of existence. And I think the plan may always have been perhaps for him to to do that. But as others have pointed out, it's not necessarily that meaningful. If he still owns it, but is not the CEO, he just installs a CEO who will do the things that he wants done as owner, or he'll get himself a new CEO. So, I don't know. You're not going to fix it that way, I don't think. It was just interesting and weird and an embarrassing moment in the history of Twitter and in the history of people thinking that billionaires must be very smart or else they wouldn't be able to become billionaires or something like that. So, kind of a bizarre chapter in the history, and it drove an enormous migration to Mastodon by my reckoning. Lots of people talking about it. Follower counts for me, people that I had been following on Twitter that I noticed had not yet moved to Mastodon, dozens and dozens of them finally showing up. So kind of exciting, and you can't melt down fast enough over there. They're having some real problems. And that wasn't even the worst of the things that have been coming down the pike for weirdos like him over the weekend. Like, for instance, the January 6th committee meets today they're expected to make criminal referrals for lots of people, including Donald Trump himself, for insurrection, not any other weird, strange, invented charges that you haven't heard of. We haven't heard of insurrection charges for quite a while, but at any rate, good morning, Greg. He's here to join us for this Monday. How you doing? How was your weekend?
Oh, we're doing good. And,
okay.
It was a fine weekend. So I got a lot to talk about in regard to Elon Musk, but other things as well.
Okay.
And I think the thing we have to be careful about with Musk is because he's such a jerk, and there's some great stories about him being a jerk at just about everywhere he works, including companies he buys and then claims to have invented.
Yeah,
but this is his style everywhere, is to completely be a jerk, and then most people ignore him. So the point there is there's a lot of confirmation bias or something akin to it, parallel to it, in which you see things go wrong on Twitter, and if you've decided to leave and go elsewhere, as a lot of people have done to Mastodon, as you pointed out, and also to Post and a couple other places, none of which really function the same way Twitter does yet.
Do not.
At this particular point in time. But if you have that, desire to see Twitter fail, then you have that confirmation bias or parallel to it that says that, well, if they're on Mastodon, they must have left Twitter. That's not necessarily true.
That's true.
I haven't. I'm on Mastodon, but I haven't left Twitter, and I still use both. And they're different things, and they do different things. And so that's sort of important. And in particular, with Twitter, there's Black Twitter and other local news stuff you simply can't get anywhere else, and so people will stay on it for that. But I want to talk about the Elon Musk saga because I just think it's fascinating and funny in a lot of ways, not funny in a lot of ways too. So this latest iteration sort of started with a kid, a teenager, who set up a account that follows Elon Musk's plane. And he tweets, but also I think other places besides Twitter, it's public information.
It is.
So, where the plane is stuff that people follow. In England, a decade ago or a generation ago, people used to follow trains, train spotting. Was this train on time? Was it late? It was 3 minutes late. What happened? Yada, yada. It's just a social thing to do. People join clubs and they all have their things that they want to do. And this is like one of them. So other people follow aviation and they follow planes. This guy was following Elon Musk's plane, and he was fine with that for a while. And then he decided that it was too personal, and he wanted to be able to anonymously go wherever he wanted to go. So he banned that guy.
Yeah, well, that'll take care of it.
And then apparently, although there's no confirmation from the police, his kid was approached by a stalker that had nothing to do with the plane thing, but he said it was. And then he announced on a whim, because he owns the place and it's his toy, that anybody who tries doxing me, I'm going to ban.
Yes, that's right. That was the bigger development of it.
Well, but it went beyond that. And then he said, okay, anybody who writes about the guy who was following my plane is going to be banned, even though they didn't mention it may have been a story that I banned the guy rather than put the data in that he was talking about. So I'll ban them too. And then it was, okay, so anybody who writes anything bad about me, I'm going to ban.
Including the best story about the guy who approached my kid.
So they did all of that, and it turned out that didn't work particularly well, and the news organizations got upset about it.
Yeah,
and so he reversed himself within a day. Simultaneously, he decided too many people, because of that iteration of being a jerk, were going to Mastodon. So what he was going to do is ban people from mentioning Mastodon.
Yes.
Like now you couldn't say, okay, I'm at Mastodon now. Here's my URL or
whether you were leaving
handle
Twitter
that you
or not.
could find me there. If you did that, you were going to be suspended. And if you were an account that was evangelizing Mastodon, then you would be permanently banned. And it got really funny because there was such a Mastodon account, and they used the hashtag join Mastodon.
Yes.
One word.
Ah, yes. Right.
Okay. And then one of
part.
Elon Musk's nutty followers misread that and read it as John Mastodon, and then invented this whole history about John Mastodon, the founder of Mastodon, and where he came from and what he did and all that stuff. And it was just so ridiculously stupid. It was like a McSweeney story.
Wow.
And it was really funny.
All right,
and so you had to go back and undo that.
Yeah.
While all of this is happening, we have the World Cup.
That's true. It was happening.
The World Cup got anything to do with this? Because it turns out that Musk had told everybody you're not allowed to dox people and say where they are.
Yes.
But right now, I'm at the World Cup. And here I am. Here's a picture of me with Jared Kushner and a bunch of Saudi investors.
Yeah, I don't think he shared that one, but some other people in the crowd just turned around and said, "Hey, there's Elon Musk," and
they started listening to what he was saying and reporting the fact that he was talking to investors about investing in Twitter, and they wanted nothing to do with it, and they started posting things like, a lot of this Elon Musk stuff is not really going to work. They're not really interested in investing in Twitter, and I heard a bunch of them tell Elon Musk he needed to step down.
So
the next thing that happens is that Elon Musk posts this. It's just such a great story. So the next thing that happens is Elon Musk posts this tweet, which is a poll. Should I step down as head of Twitter? I will abide by the results of this poll. And by this morning, there's 17 million votes, and it's 57 yes, step down, and 43% no, stay here.
Statistical.
And people like Kyle Rittenhouse and other nutcases are saying, oh, it must be bots. It's terrible. Real people want him to stay. This is awful. We'll lose our country. It's all.
What if it is bots? So what? That's the whole reason Twitter is such a mess. But okay,
right. So
now
but it's
bots
also
are a
so
problem.
funny, and one of the reasons to stay on Twitter is just it's so goddamn amusing.
Yeah,
so
Nate
Silver sees this and says, there's still 1.2 million votes left, and by my calculation, yes is you should leave is leading roughly 62 to 38. So redistrict. Dave Wasserman, are you ready to call it yet?
Yeah.
And Wasserman says, no, the race is way too unorthodox to call. You need to know the precise locations of the outstanding voters.
But you
Which
can't
I
tell
said,
them.
of course, that they're obvious. They're all in crucial Waukesha County. I mean, so he loses the poll badly. But my point is, the only people that Musk listens to isn't, people who answer the poll. It's investors.
Yes, and
the investors in Saudi Arabia during the World Cup were telling him to step down. So that's what's going to happen. So everybody said, well, this is all meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. He'll do what he wants. Sure he will. But, follow the money.
I guess so. I mean.
And so, the idea that nothing will happen to this, it's unclear. Is he just toying with you, playing with you, being a troll? No. He's being a 7-year-old kid who's stuck and he doesn't know what to do. So he's flailing. That's been true for a month.
Yep.
And this is just more of the same.
Well, I'll have to write to him.
And it's not really stopping anybody from using Twitter right now for the things they use Twitter for.
Yeah, unless you wrote about Mastodon.
Speaking amongst themselves, local people speaking among themselves, including the weather, politics people, and reporters touching base with each other. Yes, they now also do it at Post, and yes, they now also do it at Mastodon. And yeah, it's great to have a plan B or a plan C. Mastodon with all the migration is looking better every day, but it's still not to the point where what Twitter can do.
Yeah, well,
it's a little bit too siloed. On Twitter, I could still
had about 2 weeks.
laugh at Musk, talk to doctors, look at politics, talk about, bird watching and pictures, and look at what's going on with the weather in Alaska all at the same time with a single feed that took me years to create. And it's going to take a while to do that at Mastodon. I'm doing my best. I use Mastodon when it serves me, but I don't use Mastodon when it doesn't serve me, and only Twitter does. And in fact, Thomas Zimmer, a left-leaning historian, writes, much of the smartest, most incisive analysis I've encountered over the past few years has come from writers, intellectuals, and activists who, A, have little or no traditional platform through big institutions, and B, depend on Twitter for the work to find an audience. I fully understand why people are done with Twitter, but let's at least remember the livelihoods of some really important voices out there depend on the community and platform they built here. If that's gone, they simply won't be able to keep doing their thing. And it's really challenging to build anything independent. And people are trying to do that. Chris Boozy is trying to put together something called Spoutable, where you get the spout off. And Musk heard he was doing it and banned him, but it's hard.
Yes. Well,
it sucks. Zimmer says there's zero good options left on the table, and everybody has to choose whichever is the least bad option for them, obviously. But here's where I am, he says, much less excited about new possibilities elsewhere. I'm much more concerned about what we're losing here.
Yep. Well, you might not have a great number of choices. You face pressure both from people asking you to leave and the owner of the place pushing you out the door as well if you discuss
if you go
what
to
you want to do
Mastodon
next.
And you try to keep doing what you normally do, including collecting information from everywhere, but you post a tweet, people start yelling you for using Twitter, which I find incredibly annoying. Because that's, are you a true believer or are you not? No, I'm not. It's a tool. I'm trying to use it as a tool. If I post a tweet at Mastodon, it may or may not have been seen by the Mastodon people, and they may find it interesting. But at the same time, whoever posted the tweet, whoever tweeted the tweet, may have an account at Mastodon, and I can use the tweet on Mastodon to look them up, which is not simple because if they're not on your server, you have to be on Mastodon to do this.
Yes.
So there's reasons why I post tweets and then, use it to build the list I need to have on Mastodon in order to make Mastodon work functionally. And having people yell at you while you do that is a real PIA.
No, it isn't. All right. How's that?
Yeah. So I'm
it
just
is.
saying. So,
I
totally
have
get where
to admit,
Thomas
I still use an open Twitter every once in a while. Although I don't really read it the way I did, but I do open it to say, I have new followers on Mastodon. Were they following me on Twitter too? Yes. If so, in that case, I will expand my list, but I'll follow them. And then I'll, have a stream that more closely resembles what I had going on over at Twitter. But for me, that's the extent of it because, also, I have this luxury. Like if I need a list of important news stories for the morning and it's Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday, I have this incredible service that comes and compiles stories. And guess where they're compiled from? Yeah, they largely come from Twitter. I guess I'm Twitter dependent as well.
So this is Insider, one of the things I found not on Twitter. It can't be on Twitter because Lynette Lopez was banned for writing it.
Oh, the story. Yes.
Yeah. But this is the Streisand effect. Nobody knew who Lynette Lopez was. Now
Right,
everybody knows who Lynette Lopez is.
Right.
So she's on Insider, what used to be called Business Insider. Mm-hmm. And the title of the article is Elon's Stale Playbook. At Tesla and SpaceX, Elon Musk was a jerk with a grand vision. At Twitter, he's just a jerk.
Okay.
For some reason,
That's a real difference.
he got banned for this. Elon Musk is a pretty tried and true playbook for doing business. He's used it for years to build companies from Tesla to SpaceX. Unfortunately for him, it's not a model that can turn Twitter into a profitable company. It is one that will take the social media company down in flames. Here's the Musk playbook. Enter a field with very little competition. Claim your new company will solve a massive global problem or achieve a seemingly impossible goal. Raise money from a fervent group of true believers and keep them on the hook with flashy, half-baked product ideas. Suck up billions from the government, underpay, overvalue, overwork, repeat. Twitter is the antithesis of an Elon Musk company. It's an influential but small player in a field dominated by giant, well-funded competitors, Facebook, for example.
True.
And Musk tried banning people from mentioning Facebook on Twitter. That didn't go well. The government is
can't
more
be
likely
done.
to put the clamps on Twitter than give it some windfall contract. And not just the government. European governments are already suing Twitter for this nonsense.
Yeah. Problem.
And Twitter's employees have options. They can leave and work for companies that treat them much better than Musk ever would. But most importantly, a lot of people think Twitter and Musk's ownership of the company is part of a global media problem rather than a solution. And without a big world-changing
that's a
promise
good
to
point.
paper over the sophomoric product ideas and erratic management, Musk's Twitter takeover is doomed. This is coming from a business magazine. And so when you see what I told you about Musk talking to the investors,
Yes.
and the investors saying things like they're not too happy about what Musk is doing,
I'm
which,
not good at this.
by the way, is true. This is from The Observer, and it says Tesla's third largest shareholder calls for the ouster of Elon Musk as CEO. So I'm not just making it up that the investors are unhappy with him.
Well, yeah. He's
Right?
absent
So the
from
point is you read
his
it
job.
in a business magazine, then you read this other magazine that says the shareholders are calling for the ouster of Musk, and then he puts up this poll, and my reaction isn't that, okay, he's just jerking our chain. My reaction is they want him out, and he's looking for a way out, and so he figures if he puts it up for a vote, then he can claim that he's just doing the will of the people.
True.
And he can back out gracefully. That, to me, is what this looks like. Not, I'm staying anyway. I'm just going to fool you into thinking somehow or other that you don't have any influence on what I do.
I mean, I don't know how he gets out of saying I will abide.
Or
by this
I'll
poll,
okay, you wanted me to step in, I'll step down. I'll put Kanye West in charge.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
Maybe.
see that. What I see is the investors saying, you're making a pig's breakfast out of it. We're not happy. Stop it. We're not giving you any money for any of your other companies until you get the hell out of there.
Well, that would do it. Those are the sorts of people he listens to.
It's the only people he listens to.
Yes. Well, yeah. I don't know what's the difference. I think we said that, but yeah,
Well, a lot of
that's
people
who's-
talk to him. But
Oh,
he
right.
only
Well,
listens to investors.
yes. Right. And
He asks
cat turd,
opinions of a
as
lot of people.
I mentioned before,
like with
yes.
these polls, but he only listens to investors.
Yeah. All right. So that makes a lot of sense, and that's a real, I think, a pretty good explanation of what's. It's as likely as any other, more likely, I think, than other scenarios. That okay, I put up this poll. He had to have known what the results of the poll were going to be.
Of course.
I think.
But he wanted those results.
But right. So what was he going to do about it? Well, he won't be relinquishing.
I mean,
total
it's
control,
funny because that's
but-
unanimous. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Literally, everybody knows. You put up a poll like that, you know what the answer is going to be
sure.
before you do it. That's not
I mean,
the
if you
debate.
put
The
up a
debate
poll
is,
that
so
asks,
what are you
is
going
this
to
a
do with
good
the
poll?
information?
Yeah.
Are
All
you
right.
doing it to jerk our chain, or are you doing it because you want to step down and you need an excuse,
Yeah,
or
that
why
could
are
be.
you doing it?
Well, I guess we'll find out. What an interesting misdirection play for him to come up with. If it really was that the answer is, well, yeah, we'll screw
He
you
must be the
all.
New England Patriots playing the Raiders.
Maybe. I don't know. This is
There was a
this is quite
misdirection play
some.
that happened at the very end of the game, by the way, that
okay.
was rather spectacular.
Well, that explains it. I
The
missed
Patriots lost in manner
good.
that you would never, ever, ever think about. And it was actually rather funny from a cultural point
that.
of
Oh,
view.
all right.
Because, of course, the Patriots and Bill Belichick are known for being hyper competent. And on the last play of the game, they're tied, and they're trying to get into the Oakland, L.A. Raiders.
Were they back
yeah,
in
well,
L.A.? I don't even know where they are.
End zone.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're not getting anywhere. They run up the middle. They get a few yards. Now time is out. So whatever happens on this play, it's the end of the game, and then they'll have to go to overtime.
Okay.
So they're running toward their goal, and they get 10 yards, 11 yards, 12 yards. All of a sudden, the Raider defense shows up. So they lateral the ball, which are allowed to do. Remember,
Yeah,
it's
sure.
the last play.
Okay.
And they get another 2 or 3 yards, and they're about to be stopped. So they toss the ball behind them, which they're allowed to do. But that toss behind them is caught and intercepted by an L.A. Raider person who runs 50 yards downfield, scores a touchdown, and wins the game on the last play of the game.
All right.
That nobody expected. The most wild thing you've seen since this morning's World Cup, which was run by Argentina over France in a shootout.
Yes, that would have been wild too. Although
Right? And so Mbappe scores 4 goals and loses, and Lionel Messi gets his a World Cup championship final, and then 7 or 8 hours later, this thing happens, and the local announcer, the Raiders announcer, as he's trying to call this play. Oh my gosh! Oh my God! Look what happened! Oh my God! Look what happened now! Oh my God! They're running.
The marching band is on the field, right?
Goes all the way down to the field and scores and
Wow.
says, "On the first day of Hanukkah, it's a miracle."
That's a good
it was
one.
The funniest thing.
Wow.
It just came out of nowhere. He said that, and I just burst
Who was
out
calling
laughing
that game?
Because that comment made the entire play.
That's a good one. Do you know who was calling it? Well, I'll have to look it up.
Judas Maccabee.
It could have been. Maybe Ian Eagle was doing it. He's Jewish. So it could have been. I'm sure there's plenty. Well, at any rate, that's pretty good. And what a Hanukkah miracle it is. If only he had run slow enough
Well, they're going to keep running
make
that
the
play
game
for
last
8
8 days.
I mean, it's just they never run out of things to say. So anyway,
Wow, all right.
all of this is happening.
The Raiders are Jewish.
And, the theme of my pundit roundup this morning wasn't Musk. It was actually the fact that there's good news this holiday season for America.
Okay.
Watching Elon Musk meltdown is fun.
It is.
And watching the January 6th committee, which is going to have a 1:00 public meeting to vote on referring Trump to the Department of Justice. Now, the legal eagles have pointed out this has zero legal implication. And people like me have countered by saying, of course, but it has enormous political implication.
Right.
Because it's rather unusual for the House of Representatives to refer a former president to the Department of Justice for criminal charges, and just because you know the whole story, you're not a normie. The normies are going to be hearing about it tonight at the dinner table when they watch the evening news.
And they see about what happened at the Raiders game, who are now the Las Vegas Raiders, by the way, as it turns out. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Did they move
It's the
to Las
Heidi Bowl,
Vegas?
and they're still playing Joe Namath and Ryan on Pine.
Okay.
That's how that game ended, too.
Was it similar? All right. Was it Hanukkah?
Yeah, and NBC cut it off to show Heidi, and nobody saw the end of it.
All right. Okay, that famous game. Sure. Well, another Hanukkah miracle, which I'm sure wasn't Hanukkah. We'll be right back. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you.
When I have you, it's just yakety sax.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show. Is Greg had just sent me the clip of the Raiders Patriots game. But did you just find another one, or is this one the one?
The one that I sent you, I was hoping to have the monologue that I spoke, but actually the only thing it is yakety sax, which fits perfectly.
Okay, well, everyone kind of knows what that sounds like, so I guess I won't play the audio clip, but maybe I'll go looking for it, or we'll play it in the second hour or something if we can find it. I'd love to hear who's calling, and they won't put it in the last 24 seconds of the game. It's a Hanukkah miracle, and my name is Joe Smith.
Right.
No, but I don't know. And if anybody knows, let us know. But I don't know. You send your signal by semaphore, I guess, in case I can't monitor the hashtag. Maybe the KITM hashtag.
I found the actual call.
Okay,
but it was just very funny.
All right. Well, you know what? If you've got it there, I can.
There it is.
All right, I'll open it up and
just hope I didn't rickroll you.
Yeah. That's really all I have going for me at this point, is the hope that all right, let's see. If I put it in pocket, then here we go. Let's give it a shot at opening up the tweet. I'm going to Twitter, everybody. Don't yell at me. I had to get the oh wait.
It's New England versus Las Vegas.
Okay, here we go. Let's see. Can we play this? Oh, I got to turn on the sound.
He's all the way back. Stevenson Or is anyone going to?
Is inside the 30, flips it back.
Oh.
Stanford band nowhere in sight.
Uh-oh.
It's picked off.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
Unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
Incredible. Chandler Jones takes it in and wins the game for the Raiders. Have you ever seen an ending
I
like
have
that
never
one?
seen anything like that. I have no idea why he was doing that. Oh, my goodness.
Very exciting. There goes Belichick. Oh, okay. Oh, I missed the Hanukkah miracle thing. Was there a mention of that? Maybe
At the very end.
Oh, okay. Oh, this clip only goes that far.
Oh,
That's
right
odd.
at the very end, he says,
Oh.
not on the first day of Hanukkah. It's a Hanukkah miracle.
Well, I'll take your word for it for the moment. I have no other choice. But okay.
Do not try this at home. We carefully scripted
I'm at
this
home,
show
but-
days in advance.
Yeah, that's right. And now we give
and hired
over a
staff
full
to do all
minute.
the oppo work here.
So we get the last 10 seconds where they say it's a
you could have had
Hanukkah.
Yakety Sax, which, by the way, is totally appropriate too.
Yeah, well, okay. It should have been playing in the background of my trying to make this clip work, but okay.
Right.
All right.
Anyway,
well, don't
other
do that
things
play,
that are happening.
everybody.
We have articles from the AP. What Trump promised, Biden seeks to deliver in his own way. Donald Trump pledged to fix U.S. infrastructure, vowed to take on China, bulk up American manufacturing, reduce the budget deficit, and make the wealthy pay for their fair share. And after 2 years of president, it's Joe Biden who's acting on all of those promises.
Oh.
Which is good. And Jim Wright, conservative,
Good ideas.
but never Trumper, tweeted, Biden has delivered the largest economic recovery plan since Roosevelt, the largest infrastructure plan since Eisenhower, the most judges confirmed since Kennedy, the second largest health care bill since Johnson, and the largest climate change bill in history, according to Ron Klain, chief of staff, all of which is true.
Yes.
And then New York Times has this piece, which is what I led off the pundit roundup this morning, why Democrats feel surprisingly good heading into 2023. Biden's polling is up. Gas prices are down. Republicans are at loggerheads. And from the story, one of the most telling insights about Biden's popularity to me came in a recent memo by John Anzalone and Matt Hogan of Impact Research, one of the polling companies that do work for Biden. The memo noted that in the 2014 and 2018 midterm elections, voters who somewhat disapproved of Obama and Trump voted against their party by more than 20 percentage points. But not this year, the authors wrote. With those who somewhat disapproved of President Biden favoring Democratic congressional candidates by 25 points.
Well,
Democratic strategists are also closely watching the jockeying between DeSantis and Trump in the very early stages of the Republican presidential primary. Many see DeSantis as potentially formidable, but also vulnerable on three main fronts in a general election matchup, including things like his approach to vaccines. He was for them before he was against them, John Kerry style.
I guess. Boo. Right. For the reference. But, yes. But now.
But, he's also, it's something we've noted on the show here. He's awful in person.
Okay.
Right.
Womp womp.
As he seeks to outflank Trump, DeSantis is taking positions that could haunt him later this week. He insinuated vaccine manufacturers had misled the public, called for prosecutions. That might be good politics for him in a Republican primary, but it's potential poison among most voters. The public is not anti-vaccine as a whole, just Republicans.
Right.
And as one Democratic strategist noted to me, anti-vaccine language tends to attract all sorts of fringe characters whose support could pose problems for DeSantis down the road.
That's right.
Also, this week, DeSantis endorsed a 6-week abortion ban in Florida. After months of hesitation, that could lock him into a position that proved anathema to voters in swing states this year.
True.
And Democrats think DeSantis' record on kitchen table issues gives him ammunition. In a special legislative session, Florida just passed an overhaul aimed at addressing a worsening property insurance crisis in the state. The average annual premium for home insurance in Florida has soared to $4,231, the highest in the country. And some Republicans have noticed that Youngkin of Virginia recently announced a plan to reduce housing costs. Youngkin has not gone as far as DeSantis in signaling interest in the presidency, but he's doing something about it. But in Florida, DeSantis doesn't do anything about it. He's just making noise. And then there's the personality. And
That's what he
focus
does.
groups for Charlie Crist's campaign for governor, which, let's be clear, Crist lost badly. Democrats found that even many Republicans considered DeSantis personally unlikable despite cheering on his politics.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that make DeSantis not the perfect candidate. And the fact that somebody like that is running so far ahead of Trump in polls tells you where Trump is at,
Yes,
which is in a
that's
pretty
true.
bad place.
Yeah, he's having a rough time of it, which is fantastic. But he can always sell trading cards.
Right.
Which, by the way, has been a big flop.
Here's another one that I thought was of special interest because we follow these things. Caroline Bakel, writing in The Hill. I have this all in the Pundit Roundup, by the way, all the stuff that I was just telling you about, but let me give it to you here so you can find it easy. It's right after Yakety Sax.
Okay. All right, easy enough.
Why the issue of crime didn't deliver for Republicans in the midterms. At the same time, Republicans say a mix of factors like the outsized influence of national issues, poor strategy, and voter geography influenced why the issue of crime didn't resonate. It's like trying to figure out why caravans didn't work. Because, like, normies don't care, dude.
Well, they
I
certainly
understand
they
that
don't-
you love
they
to
don't
hype
move in your
it because
circles.
you think that it gets clicks and you put it on the evening news every night. But folks understand what's really going on here. And so a Republican analyst said, well, the issue of crime is like a supporting cast member. You have to have it in your issue set, and you need to connect the importance of public safety and crime into the number one issue, which is the economy. And the Republicans didn't effectively do that, said GOP strategist John Thomas.
It's getting
Like,
so you can't
you got to
afford
do it like connective
be a
tissue.
criminal.
That, you know, for example, crime means that the economy in the area isn't good or something like that. You got to do that. If you don't do that, it's not going to work.
They're not hiring enough criminals. No, wait a minute. No, that's not it. It's criminal. The tax rate on criminals is too high. We should
But,
cut
you know,
taxes.
from
on
my point of view, the problem really is Republican leadership doesn't care about crime. They don't care about their voters. They don't care about anything except power and money. And so whenever they take on one of these issues, it comes across as phony because it is.
Well, they're genuinely phony.
They're genuinely concerned about keeping power, and they think crime will do it for them, and they genuinely don't care otherwise.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, they do a great job at their phoniness. It's some of the phoniness they've got.
Right. Washington Post also tackled DeSantis. Washington Post says DeSantis reverses himself on coronavirus vaccine, moves to the right of Trump in a potential wedge issue for 2024 primary. DeSantis is attacking the life-saving COVID shots he once praised and promoted.
Yes.
Well, Trump will attack him for that. And I pointed out this is like the fourth law of Isaac
But I'm not sure
Asimov's
how that will
robotics.
Oh.
Like you shouldn't kill humans,
Yeah.
and you have to obey commands, and you're allowed to protect yourself as long as, you know, you don't violate the first two. And the fourth law of robotics is you can't run something that wins primaries if it's going to lose you a general election. And that's, you know, basically what DeSantis is doing. So he's going to adopt all these things that will make him look formidable in the Republican primary, and then, you know, Kansas and what happens with referenda on abortion and so on and such forth. And,
Yes.
and all of the
don't know what he thinks
expert
will
pundit
happen.
commentators will say, I'm shocked DeSantis didn't get traction. I told you he would, and you're not listening to me.
But he was never. Yeah. Well, I mean, unless the plan is, and these days it could very well be the plan, is that I will win the primary. What's important is winning the primary, because if you win the primary, you then get to claim that the election is rigged, and you're the standard bearer for Republicans on claiming that. So no matter what the outcome of the election is, if you win it, great. The election was fine. If you lose
That's
it,
been the move the last 6 years, and you know what? It's not working. So now what?
Yeah. Oh, I
Do
don't
you have
know.
a new playbook, or is it old and tired? You know, and
He can sell trading cards.
We analysts are stuck on this because that's the way it's been. So we can't possibly see any change coming, and so we're going to report it as if that obviously works, like crime obviously works. We reported that the entire election, and I'm really pissed off that you people didn't vote on crime the way I told you was important, because
It's
you're
a
making me look
crime
bad, so let's
that-
change the
yeah.
subject.
I don't know why the analysts still want to come up with a new playbook either. I guess they're very
No, they don't.
tired, and they could use some time off. I don't know.
Again, that
what
to me is why
makes
this January
DeSantis
6th
wanna do
stuff is
this.
so important. It's making them rewrite the
Okay,
playbook.
are they televising? I haven't seen any television discussion of it. I mean,
Well,
it's
they said it was
streamable.
a public discussion at 1 p.m. today.
Okay.
And then Wednesday, the actual report is released. So I wonder whether or not they'll televise the vote
Yeah, they
at
may
1
not.
o'clock
That might not be that
to
exciting.
send them, with a very short committee meeting, not a 2-hour presentation, but just
Mm-hmm.
here is the vote, or whether it'll just be on C-SPAN. I don't know.
I mean,
But
there's
it'll be
always
public
that.
in some fashion.
There's always, if you want to see it, yeah, and maybe that'll be it. Or they may say, television networks make their own decisions. I mean, we'll be covering it. C-SPAN will cover it. The committee will stream it. You can see it if you want to. But yeah, that might not be the exciting part. But perhaps they'll get some time for a press conference for the release of the report or something like that. An hour package, or set play for television cameras. The networks might be more favorably inclined to that.
Right. So let's tie up our whole discussion, both pre and post break,
All at once.
with this piece from Yvonne Abraham from the Boston Globe. Pay no attention to the small men behind the curtain. Elon Musk and Donald Trump give the lie to the stubborn American myth that the rich are better than you and me.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If the last couple of weeks
I like that
haven't
one.
convinced you the obscenely wealthy are no better than the rest of us, nothing. Well, boy, do people in this country
They're
have a thing for
worse.
the very rich. Americans seem to worship them, convinced they got that way because they're smarter, work harder, and that's no coincidence, are up by the bootstraps gospel preached for so long, leveraged by trickle-downers. Trickle-down has never worked. Help
been a long time
keep
coming.
the rich rich. But even the most
Yes.
devoted fans have had their commitment tested lately, as two of the country's most celebrated rich people have further revealed the pathetic clowns behind their myths. Right? And
Yes.
so I think it's true for both of them. For example, Elon Musk. Born rich, Elon Musk has millions of folks convinced he's self-made, that he's some kind of genius, his big ideas will save us all. In less than 2 months since he vastly overpaid for the Twitter site at $44 billion, Musk has fired and driven away half the staff and plenty of advertisers. He's attacked former employees, including accusing the platform's former head of trust and safety of supporting pedophilia, causing him to flee his home. He's reinstated the accounts of Nazis and other scum, suspended journalists' accounts, and presided over a surge in hateful rhetoric on the site.
There's been a lot. I've been lucky enough to avoid most of it, thankfully, but it is there.
So for those of you who want to get off Twitter, you could sort of understand why.
Yeah.
His erratic and constant tweeting is driving users away too. Musk has lost billions since the purchase and is no longer the world's richest man, stuck in Tesla. His electric car company has been plummeting too. None of this is surprising to those who've been paying close attention to him over the years. It was all there, particularly in his conduct at the helm of Tesla. It's just that Musk's deplorable qualities are much more obvious now that he spends all day using his $44 billion toy to quench his bottomless thirst for attention.
Yes.
So I thought that was a pretty good summary of what's going on there.
I suppose if if he had been tweeting all of his internal memos from Tesla, we would know more about this.
Right. And then finally, Tim Miller over at the Bulwark actually takes a shot at the bigger issue here for social media and for us. And those of us who were, for example, veterans of Daily Kos back in the day are fully familiar with this. 3 cheers for content moderation. There is no one-size-fits-all pro-free speech answer to the intractable content moderation paradox. Everybody can be pro-fish, like you are in Alaska.
Yes.
But it's a lot harder to be pro-free speech if that includes Nazis. Anybody familiar with the controversy about the ACLU defending Nazis marching in Skokie, Illinois will get it.
Yeah.
And if you're not
100,
familiar with
you will
that,
get
it's
it.
worth looking up. If you're a free speech absolutist, the Nazis are allowed to march. But, if it's a Holocaust survivor community, there's consequences to them marching. Mm-hmm. And that's where the controversy was. And if you think it's easy to decide what the right thing to do is there, then you're probably an Elon Musk fan.
Yeah. That overlap may be considerable.
A couple of years ago, when chinless Trump spokesperson Jason Miller launched Getter, one of the myriad alt-right free speech social media platforms, I, Tim Miller, wrote about the pitfalls he's going to face and summed up his challenge thusly. The question has persisted for sites big and small since the days of the very first Usenet groups. How do you balance user experience with the Internet's promise of unhindered expression?
Yes.
And here we are arguing about Mastodon and whether or not if you post a Twitter toot there, how do you balance the user experience with the Internet's promise of unhindered expression? We're here because we can say what we want. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you what Twitter said. No, you can't do that. You can't talk about Twitter here.
No, yeah. All right. Well, Never mind. I was going
Because
to
it
say,
spoils
well,
the user
the way
experience, you see.
Mastodon is, yeah.
Well,
and
this is the great
different
content
corners of
moderation
Mastodon can do it.
paradox. Getter crashed and burned in its attempts to navigate it. And Jason Miller
Well,
wasn't alone, from
it never
scammers to
took
bots
off.
to trolls to obnoxious jerks to impersonation to threats to sending assassination coordinates. Countless forum
By yourself.
moderators have failed to come up with a clean answer. Some have done better than others. All have failed to please everybody. If you allow completely unfettered speech, your forum becomes a wasteland for the
Right.
dregs of society. And if you over-moderate, users will get upset and accuse you of stifling them. There's no
true,
winning. In fact, what's happening right now today on Twitter is really just a high-visibility replica of the fight that brought down GWHhoops.com, which eventually collapsed when the annoying, harassing imposters became too big of a hassle for the post and lead post headman in charge. The best we can ask for is people at the helm who try in good faith to navigate this, do it in a manner that engenders trust, even if every decision is ultimately unsatisfying. And that's been my big problem with the Twitter files brouhaha. The journalists, it's not in square quotes, but it could be, participating in it, treat the moderation question as if there's an obvious pro-free speech answer that Jack Dorsey refused to implement because of their bias. They seem to think there was some fundamental corruption in the old guard that needs to be rooted out and brought to light, but to observers whose brains haven't been broken by the message board wars, what actually happened is pretty run-of-the-mill. Twitter was run by human beings who, like all human beings, have inherent biases. And consider, when you strip everything down to the most basic facts, what did the previous Twitter moderation regime do? They tried to crack down on hate speech, on harassment, on Russian bots, impersonators. They had some success driving the worst offenders to different social media platforms, which is why all those right-wing platforms like Getter got started.
Yes.
To relief of the core site's core users, as part of this process, Twitter made one pretty clear screw-up. They delinked a New York Post story about Hunter Biden's laptop after wrongly assuming it was part of a Russian plot. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, unclear. In less than 2 days, Twitter remedied the error and apologized. They also had one it was a stupid story, but there's no reason to prevent people from retweeting the story. It's from the New York Post.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Like, it makes a good explanation. If they had gotten some word that, oh, no, this is not an actual true story. I don't know why the Post fell for it, but it's Russian propaganda. You should get out ahead of it and stop it. That was believable at the time, certainly.
Well, most of the media
whether or
outlets
not
who
they
got the
should have done
story
it, I don't
refused to
know.
run it because it was too sketchy.
Yeah.
Only the Post ran it, and they didn't do any vetting on it. And they got a lot of stuff wrong.
Yeah.
And that was the basis behind why the Post story was banned. It's just that banning it's probably not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
The right thing to do is to post it and say, this is stupid, and here are the reasons.
Or have one of those warnings that they now have. Right. This has been adjudged a possible, influence.
But, if
operation.
that's the extent of the error, so what?
Yeah.
They also had one very
that's true.
high-profile judgment call. What were they supposed to do about a lame duck president who just sicked the mob on the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to execute America's first coup d'etat? So they banned them. Now, say what you will about the choice, and certainly it was undermined by Twitter not holding other autocrats to the same standard, any reasonable observer would concede it was defensible. And as a result, many on the right criticized Twitter's management for overreach. And Twitter made some changes to address its worst excesses. Multiple competitors offering town squares more accommodating to right-wing hate speech sprouted up, and that's not a bad outcome, right? Well, a handful of supposed free speech absolutists were enraged by it, so the old guard was replaced by the Mad King, who purchased the site so he could implement different policies, and his solution has been to reopen Twitter's pearly gates to Nazis,
Yay.
while indiscriminately banning users who offend him. This, to me, doesn't seem like much of an improvement, not because I'm upset that Musk has chosen to employ content moderation, but because I think his moderation policies are stupid. Hopefully, the public outcry will result in Musk doing exactly what Dorsey did, back off in an attempt to make the platform maximally useful. Here's the thing, though. If Musk doesn't reverse course, is that really a big deal? Is there a fundamental threat to civilization? Doesn't seem like it to me. The internet is fast. I've joined up Post, and you can join me here, and there's Snapchat and YouTube and Instagram. And unless Marco Rubio gets his way, you can even go on TikTok and give your data to the Chinese if you want.
I would advise against it, but go ahead.
So how do we balance user experience and safety with the individual's right to express themselves when these things come in conflict? Pretending like there's an easy, consistent, one-size-fits-all pro-free speech answer to the question doesn't make it true. The best we can do is moderate in good faith, hold those in charge accountable for their mistakes.
Okay.
And I think that's a pretty good piece. And again, from Daily Kos, we tried moderating. We had the best moderator in the business, Meteor Blades trying to do it. It couldn't be done. Mm-hmm. And people got unhappy and felt like they were being stifled. And then they were kicked off for being jerks, and they were unhappy about that. And some started their own site. Mm-hmm. And great. It's a big internet.
Yeah. Well, there's no way to do. I mean, there's no way. I would assume everybody would guess if you pressed them. Is there any way to do content moderation perfectly and make everyone happy? I assume everybody knows by now. Easy answer, no. It's not going to work. But, the question is, does it work for enough people? And the critical mass, the vast majority of people will be okay with this. And even if they say, well, philosophically, I have a difficulty with that, but I haven't run into this wall yet, and I'm going to continue going until I do, then, well, that'll explain a lot of things. One, the content moderation policies that tend to work best are the ones that would engender a response like that for most people. And that similarly, people will react the same way to the question of whether or not they should leave Twitter. Well, if I run into the situation where it becomes unusable, then yeah, I guess I would leave, because what would be the point of using something that's unusable? But in the meantime, it's not, so I'm going to use it. So, I guess it's that too also has no one-size-fits-all answer, as you've pointed out. All right. Well, what size is our hour with you? It seems to be about the same size as usual.
And I really don't have anything else to talk about.
Are you sure?
I got tons to talk about.
Okay. But nothing that can fit into. Okay. I will ask you this just by way of preview of something I guess I will read in the second hour. Have you seen the story of Congressman-elect George Santos and discussion of
the non-existent congressman?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, he exists, but
I will tell you, you'll read the story and tell everybody that a lot of the things that he claimed to be or do on his resume turned out not to be true.
Oh, man.
I'm going to do it in terms of the context that everybody knows. Whenever everybody knows something, it's probably not true.
Okay.
Everybody knows that the House was lost to the Democrats because of underperformance in New York State.
That is
true.
That is said. People do say that. It is known, they say.
And because there were enough seats that we thought we would win that we didn't win, and it's such a small majority for the Republicans, you can make a case that that's true.
Yes.
Why did Democrats underperform? Why did Kathy Hochul almost lose to Lee Zeldin? Not
why?
Really almost. But Zeldin did better than people thought. Why was that? Everybody knows it's crime.
Oh.
Crime was the issue in New York. Ask anybody in New York, they'll tell you. Well, because Republicans did better on crime. Well, actually, it's really unclear. There's a big story in The Hill. That I think, we covered, and if we didn't cover, we should have covered, about how, crime didn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Right. So why did crime do it in New York State? Well, the fellow George Santos you're going to talk about?
Yes.
Who doesn't exist the way that he should exist because everything he concocted about himself isn't real?
Yeah.
Maybe it's because some New York Democrats are pretty incompetent, don't know how to do opposition research, was too lazy to actually campaign, or didn't do the hard work that you need to do in order to win.
Possible.
And maybe it wasn't crime, or maybe it wasn't just crime.
It could be, and it could be not even that it was just Democratic incompetence. I brought this one up in particular before you left because you had mentioned, you were talking about the partisanship trends on Long Island. And this is
it's a
Western Long Island.
It's always been.
Yeah, and this in
This is
particular,
reverting to norm. This is
in many
returning
ways.
home.
Yes, and so it's interesting. One, that Republican voters didn't demand anything more of a story from this guy. You know, he told them a plausible enough sounding story. He said the things you're supposed to say about yourself, being a successful businessman. But at some point, yeah, the Democratic Party candidates there are probably responsible for saying, how successful is this? What is this business again? Oh, yes. Does it have an address or any of those things that might indicate that it was a real business?
Well, you
just
said
never
you work for a
bothered.
bunch of high-profile firms that everybody's heard
Yeah.
of, but when we check with them now,
Right.
nobody heard of you.
So, yeah.
Why didn't we know that then?
I've seen a lot of people trading the story, and some portion of the people trading the story saying, where were the Democrats in all this? And other people saying, it might have been nice for the New York Times to report this before the election, or, good points all around. And, it presents an interesting question. Oh, yeah, they were busy
It was
with
a crime
crime.
that this
That's
stuff
right.
wasn't done before the election.
That's true, too. Although, maybe you have something even bigger there, right? Why didn't the New York Times run this before the election? Well, they were too busy talking about the crime that nobody cared about. Certain that people did care about it.
I'm not saying crime didn't play a role. Of course it did. But
Well,
there's a
I
lot
am
of things
not.
going on, including
What am
unhappiness
I
with
saying?
the COVID response from Democrats, resentment against Andrew Cuomo and the way he ran
yes,
things
sure,
as a
of course.
Democrat, a corrupt Democratic Party, a out-of-touch Democratic Party in Albany, and stuff like this.
Could apparently it's the case, the New York Democrats could have gotten away with telling people, no, we're not incompetent. We're highly competent. We've worked for a number of very competent places. And everybody would just say, okay, it worked for George Santos. And I'll spend the second hour telling everybody exactly how that happened. But of course,
Well,
it's
since you
only,
asked,
I
I
only
thought I'd
know it
tell you.
because the New York Times. Well, you told me because you read that everyone for all the rest of the show crapping on the New York Times. I'm going to depend on their reporting. They know about it because they went out and did reporting. I didn't, so you can stay on Twitter if I can read the New York Times, or maybe we should both.
Well, that's
be
fair enough. Anyway,
canceled.
take care, and I will
Okay.
talk to you on Wednesday.
Very good. That seems like a good time for it. All right, and now time for the music, which is perfect. And so I have 30 seconds to tell you something between now and the time that the break kicks in. But what am I going to tell you? I told you what I'm going to read. Here's I'll give you the title. It'll save me time on the other side. Who is Representative-elect George Santos? Who are these rep-elects? His resume may be largely fiction. It really is. I mean, that kind of pulls the rug out from underneath the story, but it's quite fascinating in the details, I hope. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. This is it. This is the story I promised you, and it's fairly lengthy. So I guess for those of you who think I've already blown the story or that we gave away too much detail, yes, I mean, the bottom line is you'll find out that this guy is almost entirely fake. But it pays to hear a recitation of the charges being leveled against him. So that's how we'll spend at least part of our second hour. Who is Rep-elect George Santos? His resume may be largely fiction. Mr. Santos, a Republican from New York, allegedly, just saying, says he's the, quote, embodiment of the American dream. But he seems to have misrepresented a number of his career highlights, which is an easy thing to do. I mean, everybody is in the business, generally speaking, of misrepresenting career highlights, particularly those running for office. I don't know if I've ever seen quite this number of exaggerations. Now let's see. Greg's sending, I think, some warnings along, or is that right? Or maybe more commentary. He sends along, I guess, is this the toot from Mastodon? So see, he's on Mastodon monitoring what's going on there. From Aaron Pilhofer, a journalist himself, I gather, by the instance he has selected for himself on Mastodon. So many questions about this story. We'll just put put this out there before the reading of the story. So many questions about the story. So the newly elected congressman who helped the GOP claim a slim majority in the House may not be who he claims to be. And that's what's, I think, probably going to drive all the interest in this story is, what if we all knew the truth and he didn't win? Well, then they'd have a 1-seat majority, I guess, instead of a 2-seat majority or whatever. And it's important because they could get indicted right out of their majority, certainly, or get sick and die. Anyway, no one noticed until 6 weeks after the election. Obviously, where were the journalists? And I guess he's a journalist, so you ask your buddies where they were. But even more shocking, where on earth were the opposition researchers? Unbelievable. All right, yeah, well, certainly a lot that is unbelievable, including the guy's resume. That should be the focus for the moment. Grace Ashford and Michael Gold reported this story. Thanks to them for doing the work for the New York Times. George Santos, whose election to Congress on Long Island last month helped Republicans clinch a narrow majority in the House of Representatives, built his candidacy on the notion that he was the full embodiment of the American dream and was running to safeguard it for others. All right. By the way, I think they must make mention of this at some point in the story, but for all the questions about, well, where were the opposition researchers? Where were the journalists? They're doubly damned for not having picked this up because this is not George Santos's first run for Congress. I don't know whether it's his, I don't know whether he's run for other offices before, but apparently he ran in the, in 2020 as well. And still nobody picked this up. Now in 2020, I guess you can forgive it because of course he lost. But you can probably imagine that they thought, well, this guy, he's just not worth looking at. We got this race in the bag. And, on Western Long Island and, Queens, I don't see why anybody would think they have anything in the bag anywhere, but okay. Anyway, let's continue on with the Times recitation of it. His campaign, that is George Santos's campaign, by the way, was Santos? It was Matt Santos. Wasn't that the name of one of the characters on, was it West Wing? Maybe? I don't even know. I didn't watch West Wing all that closely. It was kind of infuriating. I know everybody loves West Wing. It's blasphemy to say you didn't watch the West Wing, but at the time that West Wing was in first run, I was working on Capitol Hill and elsewhere in the government, and it was like, extending your work day. I don't really want to see any more of this garbage happening. And it's not, and it wasn't an accurate reflection necessarily of the way things were actually working. It was just the topic too much. Enough. I got to get out of here. So anyway, but it was Matt Santos, right? And so George Santos, the real fake person, whose election to Congress on Long Island last month helped Republicans clinch a narrow majority in the House of Representatives, built his candidacy on this idea that he was the full embodiment of the American dream, which I guess is easy to be if you just make it up, right? Here's how it goes. His campaign biography amplified his storybook journey. That's what you'll want to do if you have such a journey, right? He is the son of Brazilian immigrants and the first openly gay Republican to win a House seat as a non-incumbent. That's a lot of descriptors, but it's an important thing. By his account, he catapulted himself from a New York City public college to become a, quote, seasoned Wall Street financier and investor with a family-owned real estate portfolio, of 13 properties and an animal rescue charity that saved more than 2,500 dogs and cats. That'll make even good Democrats happy, right? But a New York Times review of public documents and court filings from the United States and Brazil, as well as various attempts to verify claims that Mr. Santos, 34, made on the campaign trail, calls into question key parts of the resume that he sold to voters. Citigroup and Goldman Sachs, the marquee Wall Street firms on Mr. Santos's campaign biography, told the Times that they had no record of his ever working there. Officials at Baruch College, which Mr. Santos said he had graduated from in 2010, could find no record of anyone matching his name and date of birth graduating that year. I see. these are rather larger exaggerations / lies than you might have first thought. There was also little evidence that his animal rescue group, Friends of Pets United, that's an interesting name all by itself, but anyway, there was little evidence that it was, as Mr. Santos claimed, a tax-exempt organization at all. The Internal Revenue Service could locate no record of a registered charity with that name. His financial disclosure forms suggest a life of some wealth. He lent his campaign more than $700,000 during the midterm election, has donated thousands of dollars to other candidates in the last 2 years, and reported a $750,000 salary and over $1 million in dividends from his company, the Devolder Organization. Devolder, Devolder. Not sure how he pronounces it, but it may or may not be real, so who cares? Yet this firm, which has no public website or LinkedIn page, that's an interesting way of putting it, okay, but it's one of many platforms where you could, you could easily have said no website or Facebook page, but okay, is something of a mystery but I guess because it's a business, LinkedIn. On a campaign website, Mr. Santos once described Devolder as his, quote, family's firm that managed $80 million in assets. On his congressional financial disclosure, he described it as a capital introduction consulting company. Okay. That is a type of boutique firm that serves as a liaison between investment funds and deep-pocketed investors. Right. So if you were Bain Capital and you're looking for new investors, and George Santos would charge you money, Bain Capital presumably, to find rich people with money to burn, and for you to introduce them and say, here are my friends at Bain Capital, they will burn your money for you. And, well, thank you. Here is some of the money that I will not, here's money for you to burn. The rest is for Bain Capital to burn. I guess that's the job. I met some rich people and they want their money burned. Will you guys burn it for them? Yes, great. Terrific. Pay me money for introducing you. It's terrific if you can get paid that way. But Mr. Santos and his disclosures did not reveal any clients. An omission 3 election law experts say could be problematic if such clients exist. That's a good caveat there. Right. So he's made his financial disclosure. How'd you make your money? I work for Devolder. What does Devolder do? Devolder is my family firm. Yeah, but what do they do? Well, we're a liaison. We introduce people. We're a capital introduction consulting company. Okay, fine. Who are your clients? That's the important thing. Well, I don't list any. Well, if you don't have any, then that makes me think that Devolder isn't real and that you haven't completed your financial disclosure form correctly. And if you do have any, then you haven't filled out your form correctly either, because remember, the whole point of this is we want to know who has financial leverage over you as a member of Congress so that we can explain, what's going on and how you're voting and spot any trouble spots if necessary. So, he says he has clients. Who are they? I won't tell you. That's problematic for, one way or the other, either because you're lying about clients existing when they don't, or you're hiding who your clients are and they do exist. And while Mr. Santos has described a family fortune in real estate, he has not disclosed, nor could the Times find, records of his properties. That is also problematic. Mr. Santos's 8-point victory in a district in northern Long Island and northeast Queens that previously favored Democrats was considered a mild upset. He had lost decisively in the same district in 2020 to Tom Suozzi, then the Democratic incumbent, and had seemed to be too wedded to former President Donald Trump and his stances to flip his fortunes. And yet he did apparently exactly that. His appearance earlier this month at a gala in Manhattan, attended by white nationalists and right-wing conspiracy theorists, underscored his ties to Mr. Trump's right-wing base. Is that the one that murdery trader Green was at? Must be. Anyway, At the same time, new revelations uncovered by the Times, including the omission of key information on Mr. Santos's personal financial disclosures and criminal charges for check fraud in Brazil, have the potential to create ethical and possibly legal challenges once he takes office. Yeah, I would think so. Mr. Santos did not respond to repeated requests from the Times that he furnish either documents or a resume with dates that would help substantiate the claims he made on the campaign trail. He also declined to be interviewed, and neither his lawyer nor Big Dog Strategies, a Republican-oriented political consulting group that handles crisis management, I guess for him, responded to a list of questions, a detailed list at that. The lawyer, Joe Murray, said in a short statement that it was, quote, no surprise that Congressman-elect Santos has enemies at the New York Times who are attempting to smear his good name, if he has one, with these defamatory, if they are defamatory, allegations. Next up here, this is like an important little bit, I think, that grew out of that and got glossed over. The heading on the next section, a criminal case in Brazil. I mean, I know they're immigrants from Brazil, but what do they do? They're still hanging around committing crimes in Brazil, but they're immigrants as well, and they go back and forth, and they commit crimes in both places now. Mr. Santos has said he was born in Queens to parents who emigrated from Brazil and was raised in the borough. His father, he said, is Catholic and has roots in Angola. Interesting. His mother, Fatima de Volder, get it? De Volder, was descended from migrants who fled Jewish persecution in Ukraine and in World War II strife in Belgium. So, all right, very interesting there. Mr. Santos has described himself as a non-observant Jew, but also has said he is Catholic, which, okay, I guess one or the other, but you can have mixed families too, right? So what, I can accept an explanation for that, but this guy is kind of interesting. I'm Brazilian, I'm American, I'm gay, I'm Catholic, I'm Jewish, I'm rich, I'm not, I work for this firm, I didn't, I have this charity, I don't. Some of those things are a little odd and difficult to reconcile. Records show that Mr. Santos's mother, who died in 2016, lived for a time in the Brazilian city of, no clue how to pronounce, let's see, Niterói, maybe. Niterói? Nitero, accented, I. Niterói. My best guess. A Rio suburb where she was employed as a nurse. Maybe. I don't know. Probably. Right after Mr. Santos obtained a high school equivalency diploma, he apparently also spent some time there. So that was time enough for him to commit some crimes as well, or allegedly, according to reports from Brazil. In 2008, when Mr. Santos was 19, he stole the checkbook of a man his mother was caring for. Oh, according to Brazilian court records, 19 though. Okay. According to Brazilian court records uncovered by the Times. Police and court records show that Mr. Santos used the checkbook to make fraudulent purchases. What else was he going to use it for? Including a pair of shoes, which, doesn't tell us very much. Were they fancy shoes? Was it that he was shoeless and he needed shoes? I don't know. Anyway, 2 years later, Mr. Santos confessed to the crime and was later charged. The court and local prosecutor in Brazil confirmed the case remains unresolved. Mr. Santos did not respond to an official summons, and a court representative could not find him at his given address, records show. I'm sure he had gone back to the United States at that point. Oh well. That period in Brazil overlapped with when Mr. Santos said he was attending Baruch College, where he has said he was awarded a bachelor's degree in economics and finance, where they almost certainly said, don't steal other people's checkbooks and then use them to write checks to buy shoes, unless you're absolutely certain you can get away with it. But Baruch College said it was unable to find records of Mr. Santos using multiple variations of his first, middle, and last names, having graduated in 2010, as he has claimed. A biography of Mr. Santos on the website of the National Republican Congressional Committee, which is the House Republicans' campaign arm, also includes a stint at NYU, New York University. The claim is not repeated elsewhere, and an NYU spokesman found no attendance records matching his name or birth date there either. So, after he said he graduated from college, Mr. Santos began working at Citigroup, eventually becoming an associate asset manager in the company's real estate division, according to a version of his biography that was on his campaign site as recently as April, but which hints that it was removed from his site. Maybe that was one of many lies that they decided to stop telling for some reason. A spokeswoman for Citigroup, Danielle Romero Apsilos, said the company could not confirm Mr. Santos's employment, which is usually a pretty easy thing to do if you work there. She also said she was unfamiliar with Mr. Santos's self-described job title and noted that Citi had sold off its asset management operations in 2005. Not only didn't he work here, we didn't even have a division that did what he says he did here. A previous campaign biography of Mr. Santos indicates that he left Citi to work at a Turkey-based hospitality technology company, Met Global. And other profiles mention a brief role at Goldman Sachs. Met Global executives could not be reached for comment. They're in Turkey. Abby Collins, a spokeswoman at Goldman Sachs, said she could not locate any record of Santos's having worked at the company, so that one may be BS too, right, Greg?
That's bullshit.
Exactly. Attempts to find co-workers who could confirm his employment were unsuccessful, in part because Mr. Santos has not provided specific dates for his times at those companies. He has also asserted that his professional life had intersected with tragedy, so you got to forgive him, I guess. He said in an interview on WNYC that his company, which he did not identify, lost 4 employees at the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando in June of 2016. But a Times review of news coverage and obituaries found that none of the 49 victims appeared to have worked at the various firms named in his biography. And also, they were in New York. Why? Okay, whatever. That's pretty amazing. There's more. After 2 evictions, the next section says, a reversal of fortunes. That sounds good for him. As he was purportedly climbing the corporate ranks, Mr. Santos claimed to have founded Friends of Pets United, which he ran for 5 years, beginning in 2013. As a candidate, he cited the group as proof of a history of philanthropic work. Though remnants of the group and its efforts could be found on Facebook, the IRS was not able to find any record showing that the group held the tax-exempt status that Mr. Santos claimed. Neither the New York nor New Jersey Attorney General's office could find records of Friends of Pets United having been registered as a charity, which may mean a number of things, but, one of them is not that he was telling the truth about what he was doing. Friends of Pets United held at least one fundraiser with a New Jersey animal rescue group in 2017. The invitation promised drinks, donated raffle items, and a live band. Mr. Santos charged $50 for entry, according to an online fundraising page that promoted the event, but the event's beneficiary, who asked for anonymity for fear of retribution, said that she never received any of the funds. That's very Trumpy. With Mr. Santos only offering repeated excuses for not forwarding the money. Held the fundraiser, charged $50, had a party, didn't give any of the money to charity. Okay. During that same period, Mr. Santos was also facing apparent financial difficulties. But remember, he's a big rich guy now. This is now in November of 2015. A landlord in the Whitestone neighborhood of Queens filed an eviction suit in housing court accusing Mr. Santos of owing $2,250 in unpaid rent. The landlord, Maria Tolumba, said in an interview that Mr. Santos had been a, quote, nice guy and a, quote, respectful tenant, except for not paying the money. But she said that he had financial problems that led to the eviction case. Declining to elaborate further, the judge ruled in favor of Ms. Tolumba. So a ruling on the books against him there. So apparently he was in the wrong and not paying $22.50, although that's like half a month's rent for a lot of apartments in New York, apparently, these days. But this was 2015. But, again, doesn't he say, I guess, was he not yet working on Wall Street? He wasn't a Wall Street whiz just yet. So maybe that's why he was having financial difficulties. In May of 2017, Mr. Santos faced another eviction case from a rent-stabilized apartment in Sunnyside, Queens. Mr. Santos's landlord accused him of owing more than $10,000 in rent. That sounds a little more like getting evicted. Levels, stretching over 5 months, and said in court records that one of his tenants' checks had bounced, says his landlord. So Santos is bouncing checks. A warrant of eviction was issued, and Mr. Santos was fined $12,208 in a civil judgment. By early 2021, we're getting close in time here, Mr. Santos was becoming vocal on housing issues, but not from a tenant perspective. I might have understood that, right? During New York's pandemic-era eviction moratorium, Mr. Santos said on Twitter that he was a landlord affected by the freeze. So in 2017, he's being evicted from apartments he's renting. By 2021, he's angry at assistance being given to people during the pandemic with freezing rents because he's a landlord now. It could happen. Will landlords ever be able to take back possession of our property? He wrote, and I'm sure his two previous landlords said, well, we were eventually able to take back possession of our property, but you got a lot of nerve asking that question. Mr. Santos said that he and his family had not been paid rent on their 13 properties in nearly a year, adding that had he offered rental assistance to some tenants, but found that some were flat out taking advantage, or offered the assistance, but then found out that some of them were flat out taking advantage of the situation, which he would never do, of course. But Mr. Santos has not listed properties in New York on required financial disclosure forms for either of his campaigns. The only real estate that he mentioned was an apartment in Rio de Janeiro. Property records databases in New York City and Nassau County did not show any documents or deeds associated with him, immediate family members, or the Devolder organization. It is unclear what might have led to Mr. Santos's apparent reversal in fortunes. By the time he launched his first run for the House in November of 2019, Mr. Santos was working in business development at a company called Linkbridge Investors that says it connects investors with fund managers. Okay, so not dissimilar to what he now says Devolder does. Mr. Santos eventually became a vice president there, according to a company document and a May 2020 campaign disclosure form where he declared earnings of $55,000 in salary, commission, and bonuses. That's not a whole lot to be working in a place like Linkbridge Investors, whatever they are, and connecting investors with fund managers. $55,000 for that? I mean, money's money, but you would think that he would have thought he was a big player. Oh, by the way, here is a photo illustrating the piece that runs next. He is wearing, he's doing the campaigning in a fleece vest thing. I think that's very interesting. Over the next 2 years, Mr. Santos bounced between several ill-fated ventures, and the next couple of years, we're talking about the 2020s already. So a couple of ill-fated ventures right now, and yet all of a sudden he's a rich guy somehow. As he ran for Congress, he moved from Linkbridge to take on a new role as regional director of Harbor City Capital, a Florida-based investment company. Maybe that's where people were working who were at the Pulse nightclub, unless that's just a total lie too. But let's see. Once again, according to a company document in a May 2020 campaign disclosure form, so in 2019 and 2020, he's making $55,000 in salary, commission, and bonuses. But by two years later, he's complaining that he's not getting rent paid to him during the pandemic. So he's making $55K, and then he's a property. After that, he's got a rental property portfolio somehow. All right. So over the next 2 years, while he's accumulating all these rental properties, he bounces between several ill-fated ventures. Doesn't sound like it matches up, right? Harbor City, that's the Florida-based one, that he went to next, which attracted investors with YouTube videos and guarantees of double-digit returns. That'll usually get you in trouble. Yes, soon garnered attention from the SEC, which filed a lawsuit accusing the company and its founder of running a $17 million Ponzi scheme. Maybe that's where he stole the money. Neither Mr. Santos nor other colleagues were named in the lawsuit, and Mr. Santos has publicly denied having any knowledge of the scheme. 2 weeks later, a handful of former Harbor City executives formed a company called Red Strategies USA, as reported by the Daily Beast. Corporate filings listed the DeVolder organization as a partial owner, even though the papers to register DeVolder would not be filed for another week. So, a little sloppy in the record keeping there as well. Red Strategies was short-lived. Federal campaign records show it did political consulting work for at least one politician, Tina Forte, a Republican who unsuccessfully challenged Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in November before it was dissolved in September for failing to file an annual report. Tina Forte, I think, largely best known for TikTok-style videos of herself driving in her car and speaking in her very heavily accented sort of Italian-American New York accent. She doesn't give a fuck about the rest of yous or whatever. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. By the way, Darwin sends us this info that he gleans from Twitter. There's another Twitter poll up there, and you have to abide by the results of this one. Snoop Dogg using his Twitter account to ask, should I run Twitter? And so far, yes, winning handily at 81% versus no at just 19%. So you have to abide by the results. I mean, I think he should, and why not? I think if he just walked in, they'd probably just hand the keys to him at this point. And also wanted to note for the record, Mad Hatter, our friend Elrond50 on Twitter, reminds us that MSNBC, he believes, has set aside airtime for the January 6th hearings today. So for those of you looking for an easy way to flip on the TV and view it, don't take my word for it. In fact, probably don't even take Mad Hatter's word for it either. Just go and check. But take the tip. MSNBC may be the place to catch it. You should check ahead of time if it's critical to you that you be able to see it on television. I don't know. It may be the case that they are planning that, but I don't know. I'll probably be busy at that time, but you can always, C-SPAN is almost certainly guaranteed to cover it. And of course, the committee will likely stream its own hearings, and you can catch it that way as well. So where were we? We jumped back. We just found out that George Santos at some point claims to have been working with Red Strategies USA, working for, as a part of Red Strategies USA, a political consulting group. One of their clients, I guess, I don't know whether there were more, was Tina Forte, the heavily accented and foul-mouthed TikTok video lady from New York running against AOC. Anyway, so, right, and then there was no real corporate filings listed the DeVolder organization as a partial owner, even though the DeVolder organization didn't exist at the time either, because its paperwork hadn't yet been filed. And by the way, very Trumpy of him, right, too, to name the company A after he used his mother's maiden name, but then to call it the DeVolder Organization too. Okay, he likes to imitate Donald Trump. Big deal. So where were we? Right. Red Strategies didn't live very long. It dissolved in September it was dissolved on someone else did it to them for failing to file an annual report. The DeVolder Organization seems to have flourished as Mr. Santos ran for office. According to Mr. Santos's disclosures, his work there earned him a salary of $750,000, so quite a leap, right? The last salary that we saw mentioned in here anyway was from Harbor City, where they were paying him $55,000 No, that was Link Bridge Investors was paying him $55,000. Then he went to Harbor City, and there's no reported salary there, but of course Harbor City was the one that ran the $17 million Ponzi scheme. Then he went to Red Strategies, which had a bunch of loser candidates and was dissolved for failure to file reports. And then all of a sudden, boom, the DeVolder Organization, which as least as late as its involvement in Red Strategies hadn't even filed organizational papers, was suddenly paying him $750,000 salary. By the time it too was dissolved, the DeVolder Organization was dissolved. Wow. Also, for failing to file an annual report, Mr. Santos reported that it was worth more than $1 million, which, would that's where they got the $750,000, I guess, but they gave it all, the company's entire assets went to Santos's salary. That's a little fishy. All right. A November win raises new questions is our hopefully last section here. Mr. Santos announced his intent to make a second run at Congress almost immediately after the end of his first. He figured to again be an underdog in the district, which largely favored President Biden in 2020, but things began to swing in his favor. Republicans in Nassau performed well in local elections in 2021. Mr. Suozzi opted to not run for re-election in 2022, instead launching an unsuccessful bid for governor. And with high turnout expected in a midterm election that also featured a governor's race, Mr. Santos's race became more competitive and his campaign stance became more tempered. During his first campaign, Mr. Santos, an adherent of Mr. Trump, opposed mask mandates and abortion access and defended law enforcement against what he called the made-up concept of police brutality. But during his second campaign, older posts on Twitter were suddenly deleted, including his claims of election fraud that he said cost Mr. Trump the election in 2020. In March of 2021, he resurfaced the claim, writing on Twitter in a since-deleted post, "My new campaign team has 4 former loyal Trump staffers that pushed him over the finish line twice." Yes, I said twice. So, election denialism in 2020, then deleted in preparation for a run for office in 2022, but then restated in March of 2021, insisting that he was a denier once again. But then that insistence that he was once again a denier itself got deleted and denied later on. Mr. Santos also briefly claimed, without evidence, in another since-deleted tweet that he had been a victim of fraud in his first congressional race, at one point using the hashtag #StopTheSteal, a reference to a slogan associated with Mr. Trump's false election claims. And while he previously boasted that he attended the January 6th rally, but he has said not the riot, wink, wink, in support of Mr. Trump in Washington, he has since ducked questions about his attendance and a prior claim that he had written, quote, "a nice check for a law firm," unquote, to assist some rioters with their legal bills. Probably didn't do that either. Mr. Santos's improved circumstances are evident on the official financial disclosure form he filed in September with the House of Representatives, though the document still leaves questions about his finances. In a disclosure, Mr. Santos said that he was the DeVolder Organization's sole owner and managing member. He reported that the company, which is based in New York but was registered in Florida, paid him a $750,000 salary. He also earned dividends from DeVolder totaling somewhere between $1 million and $5 million, even though DeVolder's estimated value was listed in the same range. The DeVolder organization has no public-facing assets or other property that the Times could locate. Mr. Santos's disclosure form did not provide information about clients that would have contributed to such a haul, a seeming violation of the requirement to disclose any compensation in excess of $5,000 from a single source. Kedrick Payne, the vice president of the Watchdog Campaign Legal Center and a former deputy chief of counsel for the Office of Congressional Ethics, was one of 3 election law experts consulted by the Times who took issue with the lack of detail. This report raises red flags because no clients are reported for a multi-million-dollar client services company, Mr. Payne said, adding, the congressman-elect should explain what's going on. The Times attempted to interview Mr. Santos at the address where he's registered to vote, and that was associated with a campaign donation that he made in October, but a person at that address said on Sunday that she was not familiar with him. Material omissions or misrepresentations on personal financial disclosures are considered a federal crime. There's the crime problem in New York. A federal crime under the False Statements Act, which carries a maximum penalty of $250,000 and 5 years in prison. But the bar for these cases is high, given that the statute requires violations to be, quote, knowing and willful. The House of Representatives has several internal mechanisms for investigating ethics violations, issuing civil or administrative penalties when it does. Those bodies tend to act largely in egregious cases, particularly if the behavior took place before the member was inaugurated. Okay, well, this is kind of egregious. Campaign disclosures show that Mr. Santos lived large as a candidate, buying shirts for his staff from Brooks Brothers and charging the campaign for meals at the restaurant inside Bergdorf Goodman. Mr. Santos also spent a considerable amount of money traveling, charging his campaign roughly $40,000 in flights to places that included California, Texas, and Florida. All told, Mr. Santos spent more than $17,000 in Florida, mostly on restaurants and hotels, including at least one evening at the Breakers, a 5-star hotel and resort in Palm Beach, 3 miles up the road from Pervalago, Mr. Trump's private sex club and residence. I added the sex part, as I usually do. Well, anyway, not more generally than that, though, just there. Anyhow, you know what I'm talking about. No, you don't. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm talking about. That's the end of the article. He's a pretty remarkable fellow, it seems. And, not a whole lot of remedies available to them in Congress. Of course, his seat will be essential to holding on to the Republican majority. They're going to do nothing when it comes to trying to, delay his seating or conduct any investigation for that matter. It'll be up to federal authorities to prosecute that if they think there's a case there. And, man, I don't see how there couldn't be. So, all right. Well, that's just something to consider. Just wanted to put that on the radar. I think we'll be hearing more about that in the days to come. And with a very narrow majority in the House, it's important to find out whether any of the very few members that make up that difference between being in the minority and the majority are legitimate or might find themselves arrested at some point during the course of the session. So, you'll want to watch out for that. Let's see. I think maybe we'll focus on a couple other stories here. I'm just sort of casting about for the next direction to go. But there's been an awful lot of discussion lately about DeSantis, and Greg covered some of it, and he referred, I think, to the big story that's driving a lot of the current coverage of DeSantis flipping his position on vaccines. I understand it's gone as far as he's been holding public events with his Florida Surgeon General and his health advisors there, where they've just flat out gone anti-vax. The current official position of the state government of Florida is to oppose vaccines and to publish information on their websites advising people not to get the vaccines in contravention of all advice from the CDC and people who know what they're talking about. But it's it's a little crazy, to say the least. Two different approaches to the story here, but let me borrow from this one from the New York Magazine. I like the pitch of this one instead, although I have reached my monthly limit of articles, so I'll have to read it from pocket at the moment. But the headline here: Ron DeSantis' anti-vaccine campaign continues Trump's war on the rule of law. Jonathan Corner chiming in here to the Jonathan Chait, member in good standing, reasonably good standing of the Jonathan's Corner, reports this. Lock her up becomes a permanent GOP campaign tactic. What's going on here? Anti-vaccine campaign as part of Trump's war on the rule of law. An interesting way of viewing this thing. This week, Ron DeSantis announced that he would ask the Florida Supreme Court to form a grand jury to investigate makers of the COVID-19 vaccine, charging it with investigating cardiac-related deaths tied to the mRNA vaccine and bringing legal accountability for those who committed misconduct. It was perhaps inevitable that DeSantis' war on COVID vaccines would escalate to the point that he would finally threaten to bring the power of the law down on his adversaries, or adversaries, as I prefer to say for some strange reason. This reminds me along the way that I probably didn't read the other day, but I mentioned to you the other day, and I think I included in the roundup of stories for Scott to summarize for you. I had referred to with the news in Loudoun County about the indictments connected to the school board. I had mentioned that these indictments were eventually handed down by a special grand jury that was convened pursuant to an executive order from Governor Glenn Youngkin that he signed, one of his day one executive orders, in which they basically declared the outcome of the grand jury's investigation. I want these crimes investigated. All these people who knowingly, willfully committed crimes should be investigated. That's a conclusion that the grand jury is supposed to reach, that they likely, knowingly and willfully committed these crimes. And then, of course, for the jury at trial to determine whether or not they actually did that. For it to be in the directions from the governor seems a little out of keeping with the way we usually conduct our criminal investigations in this country. But I bring it up because I see the same thing happening here in Florida. But it strikes me that he's borrowing techniques from, if anyone ever outflanks him from the right, who might also be a possible contender for the presidency, he has to quickly outdo that person. And so he too will convene a grand jury with instructions to find the following, except his topic will be the vaccines. DeSantis' threats against the pharmaceutical industry are almost certainly going to fail. Producing an extraordinarily effective vaccine and then updating it to keep pace with a rapidly mutating virus in the face of a global pandemic that has killed millions of people is not actually a crime. That's a good point. If anybody ought to be held accountable for misinforming the public about vaccines, it would be DeSantis, who has promoted kooky claims about the dangers of the jab. During his appearance announcing the grand jury, DeSantis asked a doctor appearing with him, if someone came up to you and just said, "Hey, doctor, are mRNA COVID shots safe and effective?" how would you respond? The doctor dutifully reported that such language is, quote, a lie. This is not the first time DeSantis theatrically announced he would be locking up some of his favorite political targets. In August, he held a splashy news conference to announce the arrest of 20 Floridians on voting fraud charges. The indictments have since collapsed as DeSantis' targets turned out to have been victims of mistaken advice by elections authorities. but not before he was able to turn his stunt into a wave of gushy coverage in conservative media. And even though his legal case fell apart, the mere threat of arrest surely served as a deterrent for voters, legal or otherwise. Of the many ways DeSantis has mimicked Donald Trump's political style, the most chilling may be his enthusiasm for using legal power as a naked political bludgeon. Trump thrilled Republican voters in 2016 by describing Hillary Clinton as a criminal. The pretext, her disregard for executive branch email regulations as Secretary of State, is retrospectively a grim joke in light of Trump's own flagrant theft of government documents. But the specifics of the regulations was never the point. The point is that the right's enemies are presumptively a criminal class. Even though, of course, they actually are the ones that turn out to be the criminal class. You know how it is with them and accusations and confessions. Over the years, Trump's rally attendees easily transferred their lock her up chant to a series of targets without even bothering with a legal pretext. In office, Trump repeatedly ordered trumped-up investigations into his political rivals. One of those episodes, his extortion of Ukraine, led to his first impeachment. Others produced results like the investigations of Democratic lawyer Gregory Craig, a farcical counter-Mueller investigation by John Durham, and other gestures of appeasement. The key thing about all these events is that they generated virtually no pushback within the Republican Party. Only Mitt Romney deemed Trump guilty of abusing his powers by trying to gin up an investigation of Joe Biden. None of Bill Barr's acts of cooperation with Trump's corruption of justice met with serious resistance from the GOP. The Trumpian tool of ordering up legal investigations of your political targets may be limited, at least for the time being, by the capacity of the legal system. Barr's efforts to convict Craig and the Russiagate targets met with acquittals in court. DeSantis' voter fraud charges had the same fate as will his anti-vaccine campaign, but even failed prosecutions create a terrible burden for their targets, and they send a thuggish, corrupt message about the rule of law. Trump's presidency marked a moment the moment that Republicans abandoned the idea that the law could or should be enforced in an ideologically neutral fashion. DeSantis' eager mimicking of those maneuvers is a sign the party isn't going back. That's a good point in the face of all the people who say that recovery for the Republican Party is actually possible. And, I guess I eventually preferred his construction. Marked a moment that Republicans abandoned the law, the idea that the law could or should be enforced in neutral fashion. It's just one of several. I said, maybe the emphasis on it's probably the worst, but, it's just one of many. So probably worth, making that observation along the way. All right, let's see. What other fun things might we retrieve from Pocket for the last couple minutes of the show? Is this one about DeSantis as well? No, but interesting. An Elon Musk one, huh? All right, well, let me see. Let me just do a quick scan here and see if there's anything else that's critically important that you have in your pocket before the rest of the day today. There are a lot of important and fun stories, but which one will be the one we select to send you off with? Well, probably won't be an Elon Musk one. All right. We should note for the record, at the very least, because this one is nice and quick. Well, we'll see. Did we do this one on Friday or not? Noted by Tegan Goddard, noting a New York Post report that even Steve Bannon, the evil, horrible, disgusting Steve Bannon, has had enough of Donald Trump's latest stunts. Apparently he, one of many supporters who were very badly put off by the Trump NFT stunt, those stupid trading cards, which he first touted. We're going to make a major, major announcement, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, apparently I saw a report that he brought Carrie Lake to Perva Lago that day and teased a major announcement, so all the political supporters thought, oh, he's going to announce not only his run for president, but that Carrie Lake will be his vice presidential candidate or something like that, something on that level. And then instead he announced the NFTs, and Carrie Lake just hung around Pervalago for no particular reason, though apparently at some point they assembled a crowd in a ballroom and gave her a shot at the microphone, from which they announced and then played the video of Trump's announcement of his NFTs and just said, I don't know, talk about whatever you want. And she, of course, used it for election denialism. Anyway, but Steve Bannon, among several people who just said, this is too much for me. And I don't know, it seems kind of staged, like maybe they're just using like they had gotten a heads up. Use this NFT thing as a chance to distance yourself from me if you need to, for whatever reason. But he says, apparently, according to the New York Post, I can't believe it, and then demanded that everyone behind this stupid NFT collection be fired today. And he said on his crazy podcast, I can't do this anymore. But he's probably back to doing it already today. Just wanted to point out that there might really be a thing there. And we'll keep an eye on it and decide whether or not there are people really going to use this as an opportunity to defect or not. Okay. Let's see. I guess on that subject, I'll also throw this piece in, which I thought was of some interest, by Kurt Eichenwald, this time posting it over at Daily Kos, under the intriguing headline of Trump's trading card grift is worse than you think. Just, I guess, in the wake of the Santos thing. It's a similarly convoluted, stupid thing that reveals what kind of con might really be going on here. And I'll give you a flavor for it as best we can in the next couple minutes before winding up the show. So, Kurt says, writing about my own Substack post is a little odd. He refers to it here. But I decided yesterday to trace down Trump's business partners in his sleazy trading card grift, and even I was shocked at what I found and kind of surprised that no other news outlet has. Let's see what it is. Start with my favorite part. People who buy these NFTs don't even fully own them. That's odd for an NFT, I think. They are denied all sorts of rights of ownership, but the best, if they find someone to sell the digital cards to, they have to kick back 10% of the sales price to Trump and his fellow grifters. Based on what? That's crazy. It's just contractual, but I mean, what would be the basis for such a contract? But going on from there, Trump himself is not producing these NFTs. Of course, he doesn't have the wherewithal or know how to do that. Instead, in March, he set up an entity called CIC. I'm not sure what that's for, which holds the rights to his image and name for NFT licensing. Then he licensed it to a group called NFT International LLC. Brilliant name. Also set up in March, by the way, just as CIC, I think, was. The layers and layers of business covers are quite, well, unimpressive. Just low-level New Jersey scuzzy types of sleaze. Hey, but sleazy nonetheless. I traced NFT International to a mailbox at a UPS store in a strip mall in Utah. But then from there to an office building in Wyoming, and finally to a tiny brick house, he shows a picture of it above, in Cheyenne. That house is corporate home, quote-unquote home, for scores of business entities, including a number of fraudsters and international criminals. Yikes. With a little clip here, though from what source I'm not sure. The company is registered by Wyoming Corporate at 1712 Pioneer, ending with the final address at 2710 Tomes Avenue, Thomes Avenue, includes a number operated by a rogues gallery of criminals. They have included a New Jersey company, strangely called New York Machinery, that sold military car and tractor-trailer parts to the Defense Department. Also, former Ukrainian Prime Minister Pavlo Lazarenko, I don't think we know this guy, who was once ranked the 8th most corrupt official in the world by watchdog group Transparency International. In 2004, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison in California for money laundering and extortion, a scam that used shell companies and offshore bank accounts to hide stolen Ukrainian government funds. Also set up there is Ira N. Rubin, just one more con artist. In 2006, the Federal Trade Commission went to federal court in Tampa, Florida, and sued Rubin for fraud. According to the lawsuit, Rubin used at least 18 different front companies to hide his role as a credit card processor for telemarketing scams. So, sounds like they're in good company. Now, those places may or may not be associated in any way with whatever corporate entities Trump is using to sell his NFTs. But it is odd that a former president and former bigwig rich guy with billions in assets and big-time successful companies and Fortune this and 500 that has got to use a mailbox drop place to run his NFT scheme, and that it's a house in Cheyenne, Wyoming, with dozens of other known frauds using the same address. That seems kind of weird. The story goes on, but no surprise, he concludes. For his "but wait, there's more" deal, Trump got into bed with some of the sleaziest of the sleazy. And then, of course, a pitch for Kurt Eichenwald's own Substack right there, which he titles The Threats Within. So you might want to check that out following the links provided. I'll show you the Daily Coast post about it. There's certainly nothing about this little brick house in Cheyenne, Wyoming that suggests that so many major international players would be moving their business through there. But in case you thought there was anything legitimate about Trump's NFTs, well, one, see a doctor, and two, you can probably drop that idea right away. So, all right, well, now time to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Coming up next right here on Netroots Radio. Let's see what's coming up. Oh, Oregon has appointed the first Laotian judge in the United States. Congratulations to Oregon.
From netrootsradio.com.
Good for the Laotian
listening
community.
to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
Well, that's just one of many stories. The mayor of Reno, Nevada filed suit after finding a tracking device on her vehicle. That's scary. And the Iowa Democratic Party chair will step down in the wake of a vote by the National Party to put the South Carolina primary ahead of the Iowa caucuses. Long time coming there. No fault